Marcus slammed his towel down on the steel counter.
You're a dishwasher! Remember that!
The kitchen froze. Every knife stopped moving. Every burner seemed to go quiet at once. Daniel said nothing. He turned back to the sink and let the water run over his hands. 20 minutes earlier, Daniel had made the mistake of speaking up. The dish pit never stopped moving on a Friday night at the Sterling table. Plates came in stacked and left spotless in under 90 seconds. Steam rolled off the sanitizer in waves. Daniel's hands worked the sponge without him even looking down, because his eyes were somewhere else entirely. On the pass, on the plates going out, on the rhythm of a kitchen running at full speed. 20 minutes before that, one of the line cooks had reached for a garnish without checking it first. Daniel had seen the herb was already wilting under the heat lamp. "That mince turning," he said quietly. The cook glanced at it for half a second. "It's fine." He plated it anyway. Daniel let it go. It wasn't his place. It never was. He'd learned that lesson months ago, the same week he started, when he'd mentioned a knife was dull enough to be dangerous and gotten told to worry about his own station. So now he watched and said nothing most nights. Tonight, the sauce had just been too obvious to stay quiet about. He picked the plate up from the return station, brought it close, smelled it. Something was wrong. He turned to the nearest line cook. "The sauce is breaking." The cook barely looked at him. "You're washing plates." "I'm cooking them." Daniel didn't argue. He set the plate down and went back to the sink. But he kept watching, the way he always did, cataloging the pans a beat too hot, the reductions running a shade too far. 3 minutes later, Marcus tasted the same sauce himself. His face changed instantly. He spat it into the trash and grabbed the pan, yelling for backup, yelling for cream, yelling for anyone to fix it before the next ticket came up. The kitchen scrambled. Pans clattered. Orders were stacking up on the rail. Ticket after ticket. The printer chattering out demands nobody had time to answer. Daniel spoke without thinking. "Lower the heat and add the stock slowly." Everything stopped. Marcus turned around slowly, like he wasn't sure he'd heard it right. "Did you just tell me how to cook?" Daniel felt the weight of every eye in the kitchen land on him at once. "Sorry, chef." But Marcus wasn't done. He crossed the kitchen in 4 steps and got close enough that Daniel could smell the burnt cream on his apron. "You're a dishwasher. You scrub plates. You don't touch a pan. You don't speak on a dish. And you definitely don't correct me in my own kitchen. Do you understand?" "Yes, chef." Marcus walked away. Somewhere behind him, Evan smirked and shook his head, muttering just loud enough, "Dish boy thinks he's a chef now." A couple of the others laughed. Daniel looked down at the sauce Marcus had abandoned on the counter. He already knew exactly what had gone wrong. The cream had gone in too fast, over heat that was already too aggressive. He said nothing else. He picked up the next stack of dishes and got back to work. This wasn't new. This was every night. The other cooks called him Dish Boy when Marcus wasn't around, and sometimes even when he was. Nobody asked him a question that wasn't about where the clean pans were. Nobody remembered his name past his first week. He was furniture that happened to have hands. He'd stopped expecting anything different a long time ago. He came in. He worked the pit. He watched the kitchen the way some people watch a game they used to play. Close enough to see everything, too far to touch it. The night rolled on. Steam and noise and the clatter of pans hitting the pass. Daniel scrubbed and rinsed and stacked, and every few minutes his eyes drifted back to stoves anyway, clocking a pan that was a beat too hot, a sauce that needed a stir it wasn't getting. He filed it all away without meaning to. It was just how he saw a kitchen. Nobody asked him. He never offered again, not tonight. The last tickets cleared. The line cooks started breaking down their stations, wiping steel, stacking pans for the morning crew. Marcus disappeared into the office without another word to anyone. Daniel kept working long after most of the kitchen had gone quiet, because someone had to, and it was never going to be anyone but him. Near the pass, the older woman from table 9 hadn't left yet. She was talking quietly to her server, her eyes drifting toward the kitchen doors. Who was a young man washing dishes? The server followed her gaze, shrugged. Him? Nobody, really. Just kitchen staff. She didn't look convinced. Mrs. Brooks didn't leave. She sent her server back to the table, waved off the check, and sat with her hands folded until the last of the guests had cleared out. Then she walked toward the kitchen doors herself. Something regulars simply didn't do at the Sterling table. Daniel didn't notice her at first. He was elbow deep in a rack of glasses, water running hot over his hands. When he looked up, she was standing just inside the doorway, watching the way nobody in that kitchen ever had. "You cook?" she asked. Daniel hesitated, towel in hand. "Sometimes." She studied him for a moment, like the answer told her more than he meant it to. Sometimes is what people say when they're afraid to say they're good. He didn't have a response for that. Nobody had ever said anything like it to him before, not in this kitchen, not anywhere close to it. "I'm Evelyn," she said. "I've been eating here for 6 years. I've never once seen anyone taste a sauce the way you did tonight before Chef Vale even touched it." "That wasn't my place," Daniel said quietly. "That's not what I asked." He didn't know what to say to that either. She gave him a small nod, like she confirmed something she already suspected, and turned to leave. At the door, she paused. "Keep watching, Daniel," she said. "People notice talent eventually. Sometimes they just need a reason to look." She was gone before he could ask her what she meant by it. He found out the next morning. The owner, Franklin Reyes, called an emergency staff meeting before service even started. Every cook, every server, every dishwasher crammed into the kitchen, still half asleep, coffee in hand. "Richard Bell is coming Friday night," Franklin said. The room went dead silent. Even Marcus's face changed color. Richard Bell wasn't the kind of critic who destroyed restaurants for sport. He was simply the hardest man in the city to impress, and everyone in the industry knew it. A bad review from Bell didn't mean your food was terrible. It meant the rest of the city would stop pretending it was good. A great one, and reservations backed up for months. "We have 4 days," Franklin said. "Every dish goes out perfect. No excuses. This is our reputation on the line. Our private events, our regulars, everything we built." Marcus straightened up like a man who'd just been handed his one shot at redemption. He started rattling off changes before the meeting even ended. New plating, a revised tasting menu, ingredients upgraded across the board. He wanted everything elevated. He wanted nothing that could be picked apart. Daniel listened from the back of the room, saying nothing the way he always did. But something in him had shifted since the night before. Mrs. Brooks's voice was still sitting in his chest. Sometimes is what people say when they're afraid to say they're good. And for the first time in a long while, he actually let himself watch the kitchen instead of just enduring it, which was how he noticed the problem 3 days later. Marcus was finalizing the signature dish for Friday, a delicate reduction sauce that depended entirely on the quality of the cream base. A new supplier had dropped off the week's order that morning, and Daniel watched Marcus barely glance at it before signing off. Daniel checked it himself when nobody was looking. The cream was thinner than it should have been, slightly off in color. The kind of difference most people wouldn't catch unless they'd spent years learning to catch exactly that kind of difference. He stood there a long moment, holding container, weighing whether to say anything. "Tell him," some part of him said. "This is bigger than your pride. This is his whole night." But another part of him remembered exactly what happened the last time he opened his mouth in this kitchen. The silence. The way every eye had turned on him like he'd committed a crime. "You're washing plates." "I'm cooking them." He'd tried already. He'd been humiliated for it in front of everyone. Speaking up hadn't protected the sauce that night. It had only cost him. He put the container back exactly where he found it and said nothing. But as he walked back to the dish pit, his stomach tightened in a way it hadn't before. Friday was 3 days away. The most important night this restaurant had faced in years was riding on a dish that already had a crack in its foundation. Daniel had seen the problem 3 days before anyone else would taste it. And on Friday night, everyone was going to taste it. Friday arrived faster than anyone was ready for. By 6 o'clock, the dining room was fully booked. Servers moved with a tension that hadn't been there all week. In the kitchen, Marcus paced between stations, checking everything twice, snapping at anyone who moved a half second too slow. Then, at 7:15, the maitre d' leaned into the kitchen doorway. "He's here." Nobody had to ask who. Richard Bell sat at a corner table, alone, a small notebook beside his water glass. He wasn't talking to anyone. He simply watched, occasionally writing something in his notebook. Marcus went pale for exactly 1 second, then straightened his spine and barked at the line to move faster. The first courses went out clean. Appetizers. Plated fast. Nothing to worry about. But everyone in that kitchen knew the real test was coming. The signature dish. The one built around reduction sauce. The one riding on cream Daniel had already flagged 3 days ago and never mentioned. At 7:45, Marcus started the sauce. Daniel watched from the sink, hands frozen mid-scrub. The sauce looked wrong within minutes. Thinner than it should have been, refusing to tighten no matter how long it reduced. Marcus frowned, added more cream, more time, more heat, and the sauce only got worse, breaking into something grainy and separated that no amount of whisking could save. "What is happening?" Marcus muttered, tasting it, his face twisting. He knew instantly it wasn't fixable in time. "Not this batch. We need a replacement now," he shouted. The kitchen erupted into motion. Cooks scrambled for backup ingredients. Someone dropped a pan. A ticket printed. Then another. Orders backing up on the rail faster than anyone could plate them. The dining room had no idea, but the kitchen was seconds from collapse. Daniel already knew exactly what had happened. The cream, the one he'd held in his hands 3 days ago, the one he'd put back and said nothing about. Marcus grabbed whatever was closest, a thinner, lesser sauce base meant for a different dish entirely, and started dressing it up to pass as a signature. It wouldn't hold. Daniel could see it from across the kitchen. It didn't have the body, the depth, the balance the dish needed. Belle would taste the difference in one bite. Daniel stepped forward before he could stop himself. "Chef, I can fix it." Marcus barely turned his head. I know what's wrong with the cream. I can rebuild the base. Get back to your station." Marcus's voice was flat, final, already moving on. "We don't have time for this." Daniel opened his mouth again and stopped. There was nothing left to say that hadn't already been ignored twice. He stepped back toward the sink, jaw tight, watching Marcus plate the substitute with hands that weren't steady anymore. That was when Mrs. Brooks appeared at the kitchen door. She wasn't supposed to be back there, but she'd seen the panic through the past window, seen a plate sent back untouched, seen enough chaos in one glance to know something had gone badly wrong. "What's happening?" she asked Franklin, who'd rushed in behind her. Franklin explained in 3 clipped sentences: the cream, the sauce, the substitute about to go out to Richard Bell's table. Mrs. Brooks looked past him, straight at Daniel. "You said you could fix it." "I can," Daniel said. She turned to Marcus. "Then let him." Marcus let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "He's a dishwasher. You have a bad dish in 10 minutes, Mrs. Brooks said. "He's offering you a chance to fix it. What are you waiting for?" Nobody spoke. Franklin looked between them. The ruined sauce, the ticking clock, the critic waiting at table 6 with his notebook open. He had seconds to decide. 10 minutes. Franklin said, "Daniel, you have 10 minutes." The kitchen went completely silent. Daniel looked at the abandoned station in front of him. The same steel counter where Marcus had slammed his towel down and told him exactly where he belonged. He stepped forward and picked up a knife. Daniel set the knife down and grabbed a fresh pan. No time to think past the next motion. He pulled the ruined cream aside, reached instead for the butter, the shallots, a fresh bottle from the reserve rack, ingredients normally saved for the restaurant's most important dishes. He diced fast, hands moving with precision nobody in that kitchen had ever seen from him, because nobody had ever let them see it. He tasted the base stock first. Too flat. Needed acid. He reached for the vinegar, added a measured splash, tasted again. Better. Not there yet. The shallots hit the pan and started to sweat down, and for a second the smell of them, sweet, slightly caramelized, pulled something loose in his chest. His grandmother's kitchen. Her hands over the same kind of pan, her voice cutting through 40 years of noise. Smell tells you before your eyes do, Daniel. Never trust your eyes first. He blinked it away and kept moving. 2 minutes gone. He poured in the fresh cream, watched it hit the heat, and immediately backed the burner down before it could repeat what had happened to Marcus 20 minutes earlier. Slow, controlled, He stirred in a slow figure eight, the way he'd been taught before he was old enough to reach the stove without a stool. Evan drifted closer, arms crossed, waiting for it to fall apart. It didn't. For minutes gone. The sauce was tightening, but something was still off. Too sharp, missing the roundness the dish needed to actually work. Daniel tasted it again and frowned. He'd moved too fast on the acid. He needed to pull it back without losing the balance he'd already built. For a second, doubt flickered across his face. 6 minutes left. If he added more cream now, he'd have to reduce again, and there might not be time. He did it anyway. A careful pour, low heat, patient stirring. Buy himself 30 more seconds he didn't technically have. The kitchen had gone quiet around him without anyone deciding to go quiet. Pans stopped clattering, voices dropped, and one by one the lines started watching instead of working. Marcus stood near the pass, arms crossed, saying nothing, his jaw tight. Daniel tasted the sauce again. This time he didn't flinch. 8 minutes gone. He plated fast but clean, spooning the sauce in a controlled arc exactly the way he'd watched Marcus do it 100 times from across the kitchen, except his hand didn't shake and his eyes didn't leave the plate once. He wiped the rim without being told to. He set the garnish with 2 fingers, adjusted a ½ inch, then stepped back. 9 minutes, Franklin said quietly, watching the clock over the pass. Daniel looked at the plate one final time. Not proud, not nervous, just certain. The way he'd been certain about the sauce 3 nights ago and the cream 3 days ago, and every single thing this kitchen had refused to hear from him since the day he started. He picked it up himself. Nobody stopped him. Nobody laughed. For the first time since he'd walked into the Sterling table, the kitchen simply watched him work, without a single word of doubt in the room. He carried it to the pass. The server on the other side hesitated for half a second. Dishwashers didn't send plates, then took it without a word, because there was no time left to question it, and disappeared through the doors toward table 6. Daniel stood to pass, hands still faintly trembling now that it was out of them, watching the doors swing shut. Marcus finally spoke, his voice low. If Bell send that back, you better start looking for another job. Daniel didn't answer. There was nothing left to do now, but wait. Richard Bell looked at the plate for a long moment before touching it. He studied the color of the sauce, the placement of the garnish, the way the light caught the glaze. Then he picked up his fork, cut into it, and took the first bite. Nothing. No reaction at all. He chewed slowly, set his fork down, and reached for his water. In the kitchen, Daniel watched through the small pass window, his stomach tightening. Marcus had started to relax slightly, arms uncrossing, like the silence meant safety. Then Bell picked the fork back up and took a second bite. This time he paused mid-chew. He looked down at the plate like he was seeing it differently than he had a moment ago. He cut a smaller piece, deliberate, testing something. Tasted it again. Who made this? The question carried across the pass window. Marcus stepped forward on instinct, already reaching for the credit that had never once belonged to him. I'm asking who made this plate, Bell said, not even looking at him. Silence. Franklin glanced toward the back of the kitchen. Someone else's eyes followed. One by one, without a word, the entire line turned toward the dish pit. Toward Daniel, standing frozen with a towel still in his hand. Bell's gaze followed theirs. Come here. Daniel set the towel down and walked forward, past Marcus, past Evan, past every station that had never once asked his name. Bell studied him for a moment. Where did you learn to cook? My grandmother, Daniel said. She trained professionally? She ran a small neighborhood restaurant. I grew up in that kitchen. Bell nodded slowly, like that answered something he'd already suspected from the second bite. Then he asked the question that mattered more than any other. Why are you washing dishes? The kitchen went completely still. Daniel felt every eye on him, but this time it didn't feel like the sauce 3 nights ago. This time it felt different. Because that's the job I could get, Daniel said. Nobody spoke. Bell held his gaze a moment longer, then looked back down at the plate, like he was recalculating something. Make me something else, he said. Anything. Your choice. Marcus opened his mouth and closed it again. Nobody stopped Daniel this time. He turned back to the station, still warm from 10 minutes earlier, and started again. No panic this time. No 10-minute clock counting down behind him. Just Daniel, a handful of ingredients, and a room finally willing to let him work. The second plate went out 12 minutes later. Bell tasted it without hesitation this time. He didn't pause. He didn't test it twice. He simply nodded once, set his fork down, and looked toward the kitchen doors like he already knew Daniel was standing behind them. Marcus found his voice again, quieter now, but still fighting. He got lucky. Twice, maybe. That doesn't mean... Luck doesn't season a sauce, Bell said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The words landed in the kitchen, and nobody argued with them. Not even Marcus, who simply stood there with nothing left to say. Franklin pulled Daniel aside near the pass, still catching his breath from 20 of the longest minutes of his career. I want you in this kitchen. Starting Monday. You'll train with the senior team. Daniel shook his head, and for a moment Franklin looked confused. I don't want to become chef just because you finally notice me, Daniel said. I want to actually learn it right. Properly. Franklin studied him for a second, then nodded slowly, understanding. Then we'll do it properly. Paid apprenticeship, starting Monday. Full training under whoever you want to learn from. He turned to Marcus, his voice quieter now but pointed. Talent isn't the problem in this kitchen, Marcus. The problem is you stop looking for it. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. Months later, the kitchen at the Sterling table looked the same, but Daniel's place in it didn't. He worked a real station now, plating dishes with the same steady hands that had once only scrubbed them clean. Near closing one night, a new dishwasher stood at the sink, overwhelmed, falling behind on a stack of dinner plates that kept growing faster than he could clear it. Daniel walked over, rolled up his sleeves, and started working alongside him without a word. The younger man looked up, confused. You're a chef. Why are you helping me? Daniel smiled. Because somebody should have helped me. Later that night, Mrs. Brooks sat at her usual table, table 9, the same one she'd been sitting at the night. Everything changed. Daniel walked out himself and set a plate in front of her, one he'd built entirely on his own. She took a bite, then another. She set her fork down and looked up at him. Your grandmother would be proud.